I tried beating Terraria as the Warlock class. This mod adds a ton of new armor, accessories, and weapons that have to be strategically used in order to deal as much damage as possible without running out of malice. Will I be able to defeat the secret 5th pillar and take out Moonlord alongside it? Well, let's find out. I started off by checking all of the different crafting recipes and opening up my starter bag and chopping down trees. The very first warlock weapon that we could craft was the wildfire torch, and it required us getting 12 wood and 12 gel. I went over to the left side of the world and found myself a little desert cave, so I went to explore it, and then I proceeded to absolutely massacre every slime that I saw in my way. I came back to spawn, crafted myself this wildfire torch, and with the left click we could shoot out a projectile that would use up our malice, which we have in the top right, and using the right click we could shoot an explosion around us, which restores malice. Most weapons within this mod are fairly similar to this in a sense that the left click attack uses up malice and the right click restores it, and each one has its own different abilities. Our main goal now is to get ourselves a better weapon and craft our very first warlock set of armor. I picked up a ton of ice blocks over in the snow biome, explored some caves, got myself a life crystal, picked up some ore, and then upon coming back to spawn, using an anvil, 35 ice, I crafted myself the cryo spear. This dealt more damage than the sword, and left clicking throws a spear that splits into several shards, and the right clicking just jabs out like a spear, which recovers our malice. I built myself a ton of NPC houses, went over to the left side of the world, and stumbled upon a corruption biome. I used bombs in order to break the demon orbs so we can get a meteorite to spawn in, and then upon coming back to spawn, I started digging myself out a elevator. I came back to spawn, chopped down some trees, continued digging out my elevator, explored the caverns a little bit, got myself more ore, more life crystals, and upon making my way down to the underworld finally, I killed the guide voodoo demon, giving me a guide voodoo doll, and then I picked up a bunch of obsidian bricks. These obsidian bricks are going to come in handy when crafting ourselves the very first set of warlock armor. I also picked up myself a hellforge. I tried to explore the jungle, but I got overwhelmed and I ended up dying, forcing me to come back to spawn. I had noticed that a meteorite had landed, so I crafted myself a gold pickaxe and went over to pick it up. Upon coming back to spawn, I realized that that was absolutely useless and we actually can't craft anything using the meteorite. I continued digging my elevator, and once I came back to spawn, I built myself a bunch of platforms, making myself this makeshift boss arena in order to fight the Eye of Cthulhu. Once it turned night, I summoned in the eye and started spamming it with the cryosphere and the wildfire torch. I took out the Eye of Cthulhu primarily using the cryosphere just because it dealt far more damage, and this, boyos, is where I fell in love with this mod. The fact that we had to stay conscious about our malice use and restore it halfway through the boss fight just gave such an awesome dynamic, and I really wish this mod was far more fleshed out than it actually is. Like, mod developers, seriously, if you're watching this, shoot me a message. I will help you fund this mod. Anyways, after this, I built myself a platform in the corruption, chucked some bombs at the orbs, and summoned in the Eater of Worlds. Using the cryosphere, I held down the right click attack, which restores all of our malice, and it was absolutely overpowered because every single time the Eater of Worlds would come into contact with us, we would absolutely wreck him, and he would just keep on proceeding to come closer to us, which would prompt us to take out more and more of its bits. Once we took out the Eater of Worlds, I quickly came back to spawn, and using the shadow scales, I crafted myself a vengeful dagger and a death trident. The death trident spawned these death spirits on impact, and the right click was very similar to the one of the cryosphere. It was just essentially another melee attack that would restore malice. Now, the vengeful dagger could only be used under 21 malice, and it fired a life-stealing knife. This would of course restore our HP, but it didn't really deal a lot of damage, so it wasn't too worthwhile to use. I crafted myself a nightmare pickaxe and went down to the underworld to get myself some hellstone. This hellstone we're going to turn into bricks in order to combine with the obsidian bricks in order to make ourselves that one armor set that we were talking about. So once I got all the hellstone I needed, I came back to spawn and made myself a full set of depths armor. This provided us with 15 defense, and apparently with this armor set, an unhealthy amount of resentment builds up within me. While traveling over to the left side of the world, I managed to use the death trident, and the orbs that it shot out somehow went all the way down through the world and summoned in 2 queen bees. This of course caused me to take the fattest L of all time, which prompted me to come back to spawn and spend more money teleporting back over to the jungle. After my jungle expedition, I came back to spawn, and using the vines and stingers that I had gathered, I crafted myself the Ivy Warhammer. Left clicking this throws the Warhammer like a boomerang, and right clicking it swings it like a sword, which recovers our malice. After this, I I went over to Skeletron's dungeon, summoned him in, and this time I actually tried out to use the dagger. All these weapons are really fun to use, but I ended up taking him out using the death trident, and now we could enter his dungeon. I didn't really have a need to go into his dungeon as of yet, so I came back to spawn, crafted myself a molten pickaxe, and then went over to the jungle in order to get myself enough materials to craft myself the summon for the queen bee. Once I crafted myself the summon, I came back to the jungle, built myself an arena, and fought the queen bee. Using the death trident and that one dagger that restored life, we took out the queen bee, which dropped the beehive on a stick, which was one weapon that I was looking for. Essentially, with the left click, we had the ability to shoot out a bunch of bees, and upon right clicking, it shoots a flail that recovers our malice. This is probably one of the most overpowered weapons when it comes to recovering malice, so I kept this all the way until late hard mode, as it was really good. Once I came back to spawn, we got invaded by goblins, so I cleared out the goblin invasion, and after this, I went to go buy myself a bunch of buffs. I went down to the underworld, buffed up, chucked the guide voodoo doll into the lava, and using the beehive on a stick, we took out the wall of flesh fairly easily, putting us into hard mode. The wall of flesh managed to drop a warlock emblem, which came in handy, so I equipped it and then came back to spawn. The first thing I went to go do was destroy the demon altars, which blessed our world with palladium, orichalcum, and titanium. Upon coming back to spawn, I crafted myself a palladium pickaxe and then went to go mine out orichalcum. Once I had enough orichalcum, I came back to spawn, crafted myself an orichalcum anvil, an orichalcum pickaxe, and then went out to mine out titanium. As soon as I came back to spawn, we got invaded by the goblins again, so we took them out, and now our next goal was to upgrade our armor. For this, we had to get a full set of ancient armor, which required ancient cloth and a bunch of normal cloth. Ancient cloth we could only get from ghouls within the desert, so it was grind time and I could not be slacking. As it turned nighttime, I got a prompt in the bottom left of the screen that I'm gonna have a terrible night. The twins spawned in, which prompted me to die a brutal death. After this, I went down to Skeletron's dungeon, picked up some water candles so we can craft Louis AFK's ultimate battler buffs. I went down over to the underground desert and started farming out ghouls. Ghouls would drop us ancient cloth, which we could use to then craft the armor set. After trying to farm out ghouls for the longest time and being unlucky, I went down to the underworld to get myself Souls of Night, and then upon coming back to spawn, using Souls of Night and Ichor, I crafted myself the Six Sickle, which upon left clicking throws a sickle that inflicts Ichor, and when we right click it, it swings the sickle like a sword, which recovers our malice. After this, I went back down to the desert, spent loads and loads of time farming, and once I came back to spawn, I crafted myself a full set of awakened armor, giving us 42 defense, and apparently, according to the set bonus, I feel possessed. Our max malice is now 270 from the 100 that we started with, and this armor was a massive upgrade to what we previously had. As soon as I got the chance, I summoned in the destroyer, and using the Six Sickle, we tried to take him out. I got him extremely low, but right before we could kill him, it turned to daytime and he ran away. After this, wasting no time, I decided to go over and farm out some harpies to get ourselves some harpy wings and souls of flight so we could actually craft them. Upon coming back to spawn, I crafted myself harpy wings, and once it turned to nighttime again, we summoned in and defeated the destroyer. As soon as I got my hands on hallowed bars, I came over to my orichalcum anvil and crafted myself the holy fork. This, upon left clicking, shoots a holy fork which splits into 2 fireballs, and then the right click just jabs the fork like a spear. Using the holy fork, I tried to take out Skeletron Prime, and honestly it was a pretty decent weapon, but one downside is that the better weapons we get, the more they eat through our malice, making it so that we have to play even more strategically. We managed to fully take out Skeletron Prime, and before we could summon in the twins, it turned to daytime. I bought a bunch of pumpkin seeds and placed them all over our world because we're gonna need to farm out the pumpkin moon later on, and after this, once it turned nighttime again, I summoned in the twins, and using the holy fork and Six Sickle, we absolutely demolished them. The jungle now grows restless. Do you know what else grows restless, boyos? Boio when he sees that you're still not subscribed to the channel. So press the subscribe button if you have more than 2 IQ points. Please and thank you. After this, I crafted myself a pickaxe axe and then went mining for chlorophyte within the jungle. This was tough and I almost died countless times because the mobs dealt a crazy amount of damage for some reason. I also managed to find myself some life fruit, and once I came back to spawn, I crafted all my chlorophyte into bars and made myself 2 brand new weapons. The first one was a chlorophyte staff. The left click attack fired a barrage of leaves, and the right click created a chlorophyte explosion which recovered malice. This, boyos, is probably one of the most overpowered weapons within the entire mod, and I love it because you guys know that I love to cheese things. And then along with this, we also crafted ourselves a weapon called the Chlorophyte Caltrop. Left clicking through a homing chlorophyte projectile, and it did not have a right click attack, meaning that we have to utilize this weapon very carefully and use other weapons to recover our malice. While in the jungle, I actually managed to find Plantera's bulb pretty quickly, and it was very close to the previous arena that we had built for the Queen Bee, so I went over there, buffed up, broke the bulb, and started attacking her using the Chlorophyte Staff. This weapon, as I told you previously, was absolutely overpowered, and it was really easy to recover malice as well as deal damage to bosses and mobs. We took out Plantera, ate her up like a salad, and then I proceeded to go over to Skeletron's dungeon in order to farm out ectoplasm. Upon getting enough ectoplasm, I came all the way back to spawn and crafted myself the Phantom Javelin. The left click threw a javelin which split into 2 soul fields that hurt enemies in them, and the right click just jabbed out mobs like a spear. Upon gearing up properly, I bought a bunch of buffs, went over to Golem's temple, and summoned him in. We fought him, and using the Chlorophyte Staff, we absolutely destroyed him, leaving us with only a couple more bosses until we could finally defeat the Squid God. I came back to spawn and summoned in Golem a couple more times just to get ourselves some beetle husks so we can craft beetle wings. Once it turned to daytime, I actually summoned in the solar eclipse because we need to take out Mothrons in order to get ourselves the next set of armor. Upon defeating 3 Mothrons, we got ourselves enough Mothron scales to craft the 1 set of armor that we were talking about, and at first I did wait for the solar eclipse to end before crafting anything because with all the mobs attacking us, it made it nearly impossible to do any of that. During the solar eclipse, I did craft myself a weapon called the Sun Killer, which was the final upgrade of the life-stealing knives. We can only use this weapon when below 31 malice, and it fired a life-stealing piercing knife, which decreased an enemy's defense by 30 and inflicted a burn defect. I tried this weapon out, and I ended up dying to a butcher. As soon as the solar eclipse ended, I crafted myself a full set of eclipse armor and then summoned in the Pumpkin Moon. I tried to defeat the Pumpkin as soon as possible, and upon defeating him, we actually got ourselves Pumpkin Scythe. This dealt a whole load of damage, but it was an extremely slow weapon. Left clicking would throw these 2 scythes, which inflicted venom and bleeding, and the right click would swing a scythe like a sword, recovering our malice, and also dealing a heck of a load of damage. Like, I mean, this was crazy. We were dealing like thousands of damage with 1 swing. We ended up grinding out the Pumpkin Moon more and more, and then I just decided to go over to Golem's temple and farm out Golem because I could not be asked to finish the Pumpkin Moon. I went over to Skeletron's dungeon, and then using the Pumpkin Scythe, we took out the Lunatic Cultist, prompting the Celestial Pillars to spawn. I tried taking out the Vortex Pillar first, which caused me to get brutally decimated by the mobs, and upon checking my inventory, I had received a brand new item called the Alien Dial. This apparently forces the Equinox Pillar into our realm, and being completely unaware of how powerful this boss was, I summoned it in, and it spawned in the Equinox Pillar. Very soon after, this weird mob came out of it, and it started attacking me like crazy. It absolutely rushed us and destroyed us within like 2 hits. I tried to fight it over and over again, and we could not take out Edgelorian even if my life depended on it. This was a brutal boss fight, and I had to really re-strategize this time. I decided to build myself a massive asphalt arena, taking out the Nebula Pillar in the process, and then once the arena was done, or at least I thought was done, I used the Sun Killer in order to try to cheese this boss while running on the arena, and before we actually defeated it while it was very low, for some reason it despawned, which had me very frustrated because this boss fight took absolutely forever. So we did it again, and upon finally defeating this boss, we managed to get ourselves a brand new material called Equinox Fragments. Using these fragments, we could craft some of the most overpowered weapons within this mod, so that's exactly what I did. I came back to spawn, went over to the Ancient Manipulator, and crafted myself the Equinox Smasher, which was an axe that would essentially act like the Paladin's hammer and shoot out like a boomerang, dealing crazy amounts of damage with a right click that would swing and recover malice. Along with this, I also crafted myself the Solar Fury, which was the very final version of the knives, which actually recovers malice and can only be used once we have under half malice. After this, I went over to take out the Vortex Pillar, but as I did that, I died, so I went over to take out the Solar Pillar first. Then I came back to the Vortex Pillar to take it out finally. I also managed to get myself a brand new weapon called the Sandstorm's Fury while fighting sand elementals within the desert. And then lastly, the only pillar we had to take out was the Stardust Pillar, so that's of course what I went to go and do. We took out the Stardust Pillar, and now I came back to spawn, waiting for the impending doom. As soon as Mr. Moonlord Moonlord spawned in, we spammed him with the Solar Fury, and since we had a full-blown arena build out of asphalt, the boss fight wasn't too difficult. We took out all 3 of his eyes, and then using the Equinox Smasher, we finally took out his core, in which we beat Moonlord. We weren't done yet though, because I wanted to craft myself a full set of Equinox armor, Equinox wings, and the very best and final weapon in this entire mod. I crafted myself an Equinox helmet, Equinox pants, and all we were missing now was the wings and the chest plate. So I had to go beat Moonlord again. We actually managed to get 2 more new weapons, which was the Radiant Staff and the Lunar Lance, which we're going to use to craft the best weapon. And then after this, I went to go beat Duke Fishron in order to get myself another weapon which dropped from him. Upon acquiring all the weapons within the game, I crafted myself the Lightless Dark, which on left click channels a black hole spawning out black tendrils, and on right click sucks enemies into the cursor. I by accidentally almost sucked in all of my NPCs into a black hole, which would have been very bad. Using this weapon, I tried to take out Edgelorian and I wasn't very successful, so I had to go back to the Sun Killer and take him out with that. We got ourselves all the fragments upon killing Edgelorian, crafted ourselves full Equinox armor, full Equinox wings, and then, as a final symbolic boss fight, I summoned in and fought the Moonlord. Using the Lightless Dark, which summoned in the black hole, we absolutely demolished the Moonlord and sucked him into the Warlock dimension. Be sure to check out another video like this on the screen. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. This has been Boio. Peace out.